Time. It's always a factor in everything, and certainly pertinent to our sessions, to our sets, to every repetition and breaks in our strength and fitness sessions with our autism and neurodivergent athletes. I'm Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, and I am going to take you through how time influences and how we can utilize time to our and our athletes' advantages in autism fitness programming. So let's start with total session time. How many sessions do you have with each athlete per week is going to determine the amount of exercises that you use, the total exercises that you're going to incorporate, how many sets, maybe even how many repetitions you're going to use, because ultimately our goal is to create a training effect, meaning that we have sufficient volume and repetition and performance of each exercise so that the athlete is actually developing the strength, motor skills, and stability that are going to generalize to their activities of daily living. This is, or at least should be, the number one goal in our fitness programming. Second, we look at per session. How much time do you have in that session to perform all of these exercises? If you only have 20 minutes, and you have that once a week, you have to be really dialed in, and it may just be 3 or 4, even fewer exercises that you use in order to suffice for the amount of total volume, again, those sets and repetitions of each exercise, in order for it to be effective. You don't have the room for a lot of variety there. If you have 20 minutes, but you have 20 minutes 3 or 4 times a week, then you can expand on that. And even if you're not building out a lot of variety, it's fine. Oftentimes it's advantageous to have the same 2 or 3 exercises done over that 20-minute period. If you have 40 minutes during a session, we can start looking at a more robust and well-defined program that incorporates every single foundational exercise, our squats, our pushes, our pulls, our carries, and adding in our power exercises as well. So we have a standard template of power exercises and then strength exercises and our strength endurance exercises like our carries or sled pushes or sled drags. And if we have sufficient time during a session, then we can incorporate these exercises without much of an issue and not running into that, oh, time's almost up and we have 3 exercises to go from here. So this in its simplest form is the way to template out a program in a way that is going to result in that training effect for that athlete. But there's more to it as well, because not only are we looking at time from the general perspective of how many sessions, how many times per week, and how much time we have per session. And I will say that ideally, anywhere between 45 to 55 minutes in a session is enough to get everything in that is going to develop those strength and motor skills for our autism and neurodivergent athletes most of the time, because we're going to go from strictly the physical aspect of our PAC profile, that's physical, adaptive, and cognitive. The PAC profile is our standard operating system in autism fitness. And of course, as an Autism Fitness Certified Pro, you get access to the PAC profile, the assessment, and the programming templates. When we look at it, not just from the physical perspective of what exercises to use and where to put them, then we also get into the adaptive functioning. Now, you can have an athlete who is highly self-regulated, highly motivated, highly focused, and they go from one exercise to the next set of that exercise. They go from one type of exercise to the next without any issue in transition from that exercise to the next exercise, and transitioning from a break back to the exercise. Totally cool, awesome. We don't have to worry about it. Not a lot of consideration there. The athlete is on task for the entire 45 or 55 minutes, whatever that session is. And then, because we're taking into consideration that many of our autistic and neurodivergent athletes do exhibit some dysregulation, and sometimes this can be external, sometimes it can be internal dysregulation, where we may need to wait out for them to self-regulate or engage in some type of stereotypical behavior. There is, by the way, as an aside, some very compelling research on the reduction of stereotypical behaviors, spinning, flapping, etc., with the introduction and ongoing continuity of resistance training, exercise in general, but in particular resistance training for the autistic population, so that it's something to consider. However, we know that many of our neurodivergent athletes are going to engage in these dysregulated either hyposensitivity or hypersensitivity behaviors, and we want to be very considerate of this in our program. So we're not going to take an athlete who is dysregulated and say, well, you need to do that next set of squats. We need to wait it out oftentimes. So that is going to be a consideration with respect to our programming, meaning that even though we know a set of squats can take, on average, let's say, anywhere from 30 to 50 seconds for a set of 10, especially if it's unloaded and just body weight. But we have an athlete who is engaging in some type of sensory dysregulation for, 25 or 30 seconds. And now that turns what could have been a 45 or 50 second set of that squat into a minute and a half or 2 minutes. If we know that this is happening on a regular basis, then we have to add this into our understanding of how that program needs to work. And it may be that we dial back the total number of exercises that we're using in that program. So rather than saying, oh, we always have 5 exercises planned, but we are getting to 3, maybe it's time to take a look at that program and say, you know what, at least for the short term, until we're seeing a reduction in that stereotypical behavior, then we're just going to use 3 exercises, or we're going to reduce the total number of sets for those exercises from 4 to 3 so that we can get everything in. There are a few right ways to do this and a number of incorrect or ineffective ways to do this as well. So we have to understand things from the adaptive perspective of our athletes in addition to the program itself. The other consideration with respect to adaptive functioning is whether or not the athlete is going to be able to successfully and easily transition from a break or reinforcer time back to the exercise itself. So if you have an athlete, I've had many over the course of my career who are sitting on the box, or they are, taking a walking break between exercises, and your timer on your phone says a minute or it says 30 seconds, but that athlete really takes a minute and a half or 2 minutes to come back and be self-regulated to perform that exercise. That's another thing that we have to build into that program as well, knowing that it's going to take longer than we initially anticipated for that athlete to get back to that exercise. Again, this is something that may decrease the total number of exercises we're using per session so that we're not overestimating or overprogramming for that athlete in the short term. Over time, do we want to decrease the amount that they are taking for a break from like a minute to maybe 30 seconds? Yeah, absolutely. But then there's the other side of that. What happens when the athlete starts to progress with an exercise and truly needs that 45 or 60 second break period to physically recover? Oftentimes when we start out with our autistic and neurodivergent athletes, the break time is more self-regulatory than it is physiological. But we get through that threshold of the athlete performing that set of push-ups or that set of squats beyond what we call standard, and they're progressing with load and volume, they physically may need that break, which brings us to another issue. Sometimes we have an athlete that does not want to take a break and they want to get right back into the exercise, either because they're motivated to do that exercise, or sometimes because the quicker they do it, the quicker they're done with it. So the motivation is to finish all the sets and finish all the repetitions so they don't have to do it anymore during that session. And oftentimes this is a good indication that we need to add in a break for that athlete, or if that becomes really stressing for the athlete, we may add in a second exercise. This is the difference between doing straightforward sets and supersets. which is something that you also get in the Autism Fitness Certified Pro program. I won't elaborate much on difference between sets and straight sets and supersets right now. It's beyond the scope of this video, but really important to know about that from a programming perspective. And finally, we get to cognitive. So physical, adaptive, cognitive in our PAC profile. Cognitive, meaning communication, short-term memory, and then motor imitation. Sometimes we have an athlete who exhibits a processing delay, and after we give them a communication about what exercise they're doing next, or they're looking at their board and they're choosing the next exercise, they have a 10 or 15 or 20 second processing delay. This is another thing similar to dysregulation that it's not the same thing, but it may result in the same practice where we are building out a program knowing that this athlete has a processing delay that is going to increase the total amount of time spent on that particular set of that particular exercise. And this is something where you want to take a look at it and, of course, take data on it and record it so that you know for next time, is it feasible for us to do 3 sets of this squat during a session, or do we have to limit it to 2, at least in the short term, so that we can get to the overhead presses or we can get to the push-up? So time is an extremely relevant factor for a number of reasons for our autism and neurodivergent athletes programs. So it's something to think about. How many total sessions do you have per week? How much time do you have in that session? How much is actually getting accomplished in that session for that athlete based on the current exercises that you're doing? Does it have continuity? Is there consistency in the exercises? And what trends do we see with that athlete with respect to any processing delay, any dysregulation? Is that happening once during a session? Is it happening after every set? These are things that are really important because they're going to enable us to optimize our program so that training effect actually occurs. The athlete gets stronger, more stable, is performing better, so that shows up in activities of daily living, so their life is better, so the quality of life is improved, so that athlete has a lifetime of independence, of health, and of being able to move around, not in pain, but actually feeling good. And if you want to be the one who delivers these programs, look no further than the Autism Fitness Pro course. Here it is. You can register and start your coursework right away. You can go to the website and download the course syllabus so you know exactly what you're getting. So you have over 10 hours of self-paced online course, and then you meet me or one of our master pros for your hands-on, feet-on, brains-on, full-day practical that you can do in person or virtually anywhere in the world throughout the year. I am Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement. Before I go, please definitely subscribe and share these videos with people for whom they might make a difference. If they are already working in a fitness capacity, or if you have an inclination that they might be great, or you might be great working in a fitness capacity and delivering effective, meaningful fitness programs to the autism population all around the world. I'd love to know what you think. Please leave comments and questions in the comments section below. Helps the algorithm, and it also helps me because I love answering questions. Thank you very much for watching. Do you want to do sandbag carry again, or do you want to do squats? Okay. Here, squats up on the platform. Yes. 1, 2. That looks great. 3. Four. 5.